In 845, a Frankish annal named Reginherus as the leader of a fleet attacking Paris. That near-contemporary entry is brief, hostile, and far less certain than Ragnar's later worldwide fame suggests. The name resembles Ragnar, but resemblance alone cannot prove that Reginherus was the saga hero Ragnar Lothbrok. His fame, therefore, begins with a paradox. The recognizable historical trace is smaller than the legend built around it. To understand his prominence, we must follow a name through conquest, family memory, manuscripts, print, and modern entertainment. The journey starts in Carolingian Francia, where monastic writers recorded attacks as shocks to Christian political order. The Annals of Saint Bertin describe a Scandinavian force moving up the Seine and extracting payment from Charles the Bald. Their commander, Reginherus, reportedly died not long afterward, according to an account shaped by providential Christian judgment. No surviving contemporary Scandinavian biography connects that commander to snakes, prophetic wives, or a sprawling royal family. Even so, the Paris attack offered later memory an ideal foundation, a named leader, a great city, and royal humiliation. Fame needs more than an event because countless Viking commanders appear once in records and then disappear. Ragnar's name became attached to people and stories that carried influence across several political worlds. In England, Scandinavian armies conquered kingdoms during the later 9th century and founded durable centers of power. Some leaders were subsequently remembered as Ragnar's sons, especially Ivar, Bjorn, Halfdan, Ubba, and Sigurd. The exact list changes between texts, warning that this was literary kinship as well as possible genealogy. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records the Great Army and its campaigns without presenting Ragnar as their organizing patriarch. Later accounts increasingly supplied that connection, turning separate conquerors into branches of one formidable household. This family structure multiplied Ragnar's narrative reach far beyond any campaign securely attributable to him. An audience following Ivar in England, Bjorn in the Mediterranean, or Sigurd in Scandinavia could meet Ragnar again. Fatherhood made him a center of gravity, even when the supposed sons belonged to incompatible chronologies or traditions. The mechanism resembles a map drawn backward from famous descendants toward an ancestor large enough to contain them. Political memory benefited because kinship gave scattered victories a single origin and made conquest resemble inherited destiny. For communities living under Scandinavian rulers, such pedigrees could also explain new power through a prestigious, heroic past. None of this demonstrates deliberate fabrication by one author. Traditions accumulated through retelling, competition, and recombination. The next stage unfolded in Scandinavian and Icelandic literature, where Ragnar became useful to several storytelling traditions. Skaldic poetry associated with the tale of Ragnar's Drapa is attributed to Bragi Badason, although transmission complicates firm dating. Its surviving stanzas concern legendary scenes on a shield, not a dependable biography of Ragnar himself. The poem nevertheless helped link a Ragnar figure with aristocratic gift exchange and the prestige of court poetry. Later prose writers could place names already resonant with elite culture inside larger and more coherent narratives. By the 12th and 13th centuries, Danish and Icelandic authors worked in Christian societies, looking back upon pagan ancestors. Saxo Grammaticus made Ragnar a major warrior ruler within his ambitious Latin history of the Danes. The Icelandic saga of Ragnar Lothbrok arranged marriages, monsters, sons, vengeance, and succession into a compact heroic life. These works were not eyewitness reports preserved unchanged across 4 centuries. They were sophisticated medieval compositions using older names, poetic motifs, oral material, and contemporary ideas about rulership. Saxo and the Icelandic saga do not simply repeat one stable story. They differ over Ragnar's relationships, campaigns, family composition, and the sequence by which his career acquires meaning. Contradiction did not weaken his fame because each version gave new audiences a Ragnar suited to their literary world. The hero could embody Danish expansion in one account and anchor a legendary family cycle in another. His death became especially portable because later tradition gave it a memorable shape. The snake pit, attributed to King Ella of Northumbria, transforms defeat into a test of composure and lineage. Historical records do not securely establish that Ragnar died in this manner or that Ella captured him. Yet the scene converts an uncertain ending into a cause demanding continuation through his sons. Defeat, therefore, strengthens the legend instead of closing it. The revenge story sends attention forward to conquerors whose activities left firmer marks in English records. Their documented success then seems to authenticate the father retrospectively, although that reasoning moves backward from story to history. Ragnar's fame grew through this loop between a shadowed parent and more visible descendants. Another powerful element was his succession of extraordinary partners in later literature. Thora, Aslag, and Lagertha belong to different narrative configurations, not a securely recoverable sequence of marriages. Each expands the story into another genre: dragon challenge, prophetic ancestry, dynastic motherhood, or warrior woman tradition. These women should not be treated merely as decorations around a male hero. Their stories supply tests, bloodlines, rival models of authority, and sons whose identities reorganize Ragnar's life. At the same time, their literary vividness cannot establish their historical relationships to a 9th century commander. The resulting cycle offered more roles and tensions than a simple raid narrative could sustain. It could be heard as adventure, family tragedy, royal origin, moral warning, or conflict between fate and judgment. Manuscript culture preserved these possibilities selectively, with surviving copies often much later than the imagined events. Every copy depended on scribes, patrons, religious institutions, and readers who considered the material worth transmitting. Survival itself created fame by allowing Ragnar's cycle to reach periods that had forgotten many comparable figures. The name then crossed another threshold when Northern antiquities entered European print culture. Early modern scholars collected, translated, and debated Old Norse and Danish texts while constructing national histories. The poem known as Krákumál became especially influential through translations, although its Ragnar attribution and historical value remain uncertain. Readers encountered a defiant northern death song and often treated it as a window into authentic Viking mentality. That reception magnified the image of Ragnar as fearless pagan warrior, even though the poem is a later literary creation. Printed editions separated the story from the small manuscript communities that had previously carried it. Translation also made Ragnar available to readers who could not approach Old Norse, Danish, Latin, or medieval Icelandic prose. During the Romantic period, Northern legend acquired new appeal as artists and writers sought sublime ancestral worlds. Ragnar fitted that demand unusually well because his story combined royal scale, family conflict, travel, and a dramatic death. He was flexible enough to serve competing national imaginations without belonging securely to any modern nation. Denmark could emphasize a conquering king, while other audiences followed descendants across England and the wider North Atlantic imagination. Modern historical scholarship complicated these claims, but careful uncertainty rarely travels as quickly as a complete heroic biography. Popular retellings compressed Reginherus, Saga Ragnar, legendary sons, and later poems into one continuous individual. That composite possessed what the contemporary record lacked: childhood, marriages, motives, companions, victories, and final words. Cinema, Novels, comics, games, and television inherited the composite rather than independently discovering a 9th century life. Each medium favored recognizable faces and continuous character development, which made uncertainties easy to smooth away. Television provided the decisive recent expansion by bringing Ragnar into homes far beyond readers of medieval literature. Modern dramatization is not historical evidence, but it is powerful evidence for how fame now circulates. A serial protagonist can occupy dozens of hours, creating familiarity no annal entry could possibly achieve. Costume, performance, music, and invented relationships gave emotional continuity to traditions originally separated by centuries. Online discussion then multiplied comparisons between dramatization, saga, and history, keeping Ragnar prominent even through correction. Searches for the historical Ragnar often begin because audiences first encountered a fictional version. Paradoxically, every warning about uncertainty can renew interest in the person behind the character. His doubtful historicity becomes part of the attraction, inviting repeated attempts to separate commander from composite. Other Viking Age figures possess stronger contemporary documentation, including Alfred, Harold Bluetooth, and Knut. They do not always dominate popular memory because documentation alone does not produce a self-renewing narrative cycle. Ragnar's cycle connects raid, kingship, romance, parenthood, defeat, revenge, and dynastic succession within one memorable name. Its geographical range also matches the modern appetite for a Viking world stretching from Francia to England and Scandinavia. Such range is literary as much as historical, but it lets separate audiences enter through different episodes. Fame accumulated whenever one layer made the next layer easier to tell. The Paris attack supplied a plausible historical glint, while famous sons supplied consequences larger than their father's record. Medieval authors provided architecture, early modern editors provided access, and mass media provided faces and sustained attention. No single moment crowned Ragnar the most famous Viking. His prominence emerged from repeated acts of selection across more than a millennium. Those selections favored a figure who could absorb contradictions without losing his name. Historical caution removes several familiar certainties, but does not erase the cultural process that produced them. We can securely say that medieval writers knew multiple Ragnar traditions and made them central to heroic history. We can also identify a 9th century Reginherus without confidently merging every later episode into his career. What remains unknown is whether one historical individual provided the main core, or whether several memories converged early. That uncertainty distinguishes Ragnar from securely documented rulers, yet it also helped later storytellers keep remaking him. His exceptional fame belongs partly to Viking Age events and partly to the long machinery of remembrance. The commander in the Frankish Annal is a narrow possibility, not the complete man recognized around the world. Ragnar became the most famous Viking because generations repeatedly gave one uncertain name their strongest stories.